Get ready to peek behind the curtains, folks, because this time we're diving deep into a case that proves even the most perfect lawns can hide some seriously dark secrets.
Oh, absolutely. It's the kind of story that reminds you never truly know what's going on behind closed doors.
Right, we're talking murder in suburbia.
Yeah,
The idyllic town of Pina Hill. Think white picket fences, bake sales, the whole shebang.
the kind of place where you wouldn't expect much trouble.
Exactly. But that's where things get interesting. We're digging into the case of Jennifer Johnson,
Mm.
a seemingly ordinary wife and mother found murdered in her own home.
And the prime suspect. Well, let's just say it wasn't some stranger lurking in the shadows.
Nope, not even close. We're talking friends, neighbors, even spouses tangled up in a web of secrets and lies that ultimately led to murder.
It's a story that grabbed headlines nationwide and captivated true crime enthusiasts like ourselves. And today we're dissecting every detail.
We've got court documents, witness testimonies, even a juicy tell-all from a local reporter who really blew this thing wide open.
So buckle up, because this deep dive is going to take you on a wild ride through the underbelly of suburban life. We'll uncover the truth behind Jennifer Johnson's tragic end and explore the dark side of secrets, obsession, and the dangerous lengths people will go to keep them buried.
All right, so let's set the scene. Pina Hill, like I said, picture-perfect suburbia, and that's where we meet our key players. First up, Daniel and Linda Garner, married for a decade. He's an architect, she's a teacher. They seem to have it all figured out, the perfect life, the perfect marriage.
And then we have Mark and Jennifer Johnson, new to Pina Hill, but already fitting in perfectly with the whole neighborhood barbecue crowd.
He worked in finance. She had a knack for interior design. From the outside looking in, you'd never suspect anything was amiss.
But as we'll soon discover, appearances can be deceiving. And these two couples were harboring a secret that would shatter the illusion of their picture-perfect lives.
A secret so scandalous, so unexpected, it would make even the most seasoned soap opera writer blush.
Are you ready for this?
Hit me with it.
These two seemingly ordinary couples, well, they had a wife-swapping pact.
You heard that right, folks. Hidden beneath the surface of potlucks and PTA meetings was this clandestine agreement. It's like something out of those steamy novels you read when you think no one's watching.
It's true. And it begs the question, what leads people to seek out such arrangements? What are they hoping to find that's missing in their own marriages?
It's a question that's baffled psychologists and sociologists for ages. Is it about rekindling the spark, exploring those taboo desires? Or is there something more at play, a deeper dissatisfaction with the perceived monotony of long-term relationships?
And in this case, the pact becomes less about spicing things up and more about fueling a dangerous obsession.
Because, as we'll uncover in this deep dive, it wasn't just harmless experimentation that went too far. The more we dug into this case, the more we realized that Daniel, the architect, had become fixated on Jennifer.
And that's where this story takes a dark and twisted turn.
It's like walking a tightrope, right? You've got these heightened emotions, this agreement that's already pushing boundaries, and then you add an obsession into the mix.
It's a recipe for disaster, really. And that's exactly what happened here. As Jennifer tried to distance herself to reclaim her own life, Daniel's behavior spiraled.
Oh, it definitely escalated. It's like he flipped a switch, from seemingly normal to totally unhinged.
The sources paint a disturbing picture of his descent into obsession. He started bombarding Jennifer with messages, calls, even showing up at her work, unannounced. Classic stalking behavior.
It's terrifying how easily someone can cross that line. It's like their own desires completely consume them. Any sense of boundaries just vanishes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for Jennifer, it was pure torment. Imagine living with that constant fear, always looking over your shoulder, wondering when he might show up again.
I remember reading excerpts from her therapist's notes. The anxiety just leaps off the page. You really get a sense of the emotional toll this was taking on her.
It's heartbreaking. And this is where Linda's role in all of this becomes even more perplexing.
Right, because she's not just a bystander in all of this. She's married to this man who's clearly unraveling.
Exactly. And there's a particularly disturbing detail in the court documents that really highlights this. It describes a confrontation at a local park. Daniel screaming at Jennifer in broad daylight, completely losing control, and Linda is there, witnessing the whole thing.
Wow, talk about a tense situation. So what did she do?
That's the question that haunted investigators. Did she try to intervene? Did she try to reason with him?
Apparently not. According to witnesses, she just stood there, frozen, silent, almost like she was in shock.
It's a detail that speaks volumes. Was it fear, denial, or was there something more calculated at play?
It's a question that plagued the prosecution throughout the trial. They argued that Linda, whether out of misplaced loyalty or a desire to protect her own carefully crafted life, chose to enable Daniel's behavior.
It's important to remember the context here at Pina Hill. where appearances are everything. Did Linda convince herself that if she ignored it, if she pretended it wasn't happening, it would just go away?
Or was she afraid of the truth, afraid of what might happen if she acknowledged the monster her husband was becoming?
It's a chilling thought. And unfortunately, as we'll soon discover, this is only the tip of the iceberg.
Because things are about to take a very dark turn.
A tragic and irreversible turn.
You're right, Mark Johnson was away on a business trip when it happened. Just a stroke of terrible luck, really.
It left Jennifer alone and vulnerable. The perfect target for Daniel's spiraling obsession.
And fueled by rage and this twisted sense of entitlement, Daniel broke into the Johnson house.
He found Jennifer asleep in her bed.
And he stabbed her. Multiple times.
The brutality of the act sent shockwaves through Pine Hill. This quiet community rocked to its core by such a senseless act of violence.
It's hard to fathom the darkness that must have consumed Daniel in that moment. The level of rage and hatred to commit such a horrific act.
And as if the murder itself wasn't shocking enough, there's another layer to this story, a twist that implicates Linda even further.
Wait, what else did she do? I can't even imagine finding yourself in that situation. I mean, how do you process something like that?
It's the kind of thing that can shatter your worldview, make you question everything you thought you knew.
Absolutely. And in Linda's case, it seems like she chose to cling to the familiar, to protect her version of reality, even if it meant ignoring the horrific truth.
Denial is a powerful force.
Yeah.
It allows us to block out the unbearable, to construct our own narratives, even in the face of overwhelming evidence.
So what happened? Did Linda try to cover for Daniel?
Well, the prosecution certainly thought so. They pointed to a series of incriminating text messages, recovered from Linda's phone messages, that suggested she knew about the murder all along, and even helped Daniel cover his tracks.
No way. Seriously, what did these messages say?
I'll give you an example. Just hours after the murder, Daniel texted Linda, "It's done." He wrote, "I did what I had to do."
Chills. Literal chills. And what did Linda say?
Her response was just 3 words, but they spoke volumes. "I'll take care of everything," she replied.
Oh my God. It's like something out of a movie, so they really thought they could get away with it.
For a while, it seemed like they might. Pine Hill, with its tight-knit community and aversion to scandal, provided the perfect cover. But you know what they say? The truth always has a way of coming out.
And in this case, it was Detective Mitchell, a seasoned investigator known for his sharp instincts and meticulous attention to detail, who refused to let this one go.
He had a hunch that there was more to this story than met the eye, and he was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost.
This is the part that always gets me, the unraveling, that moment when the pieces start falling into place. What was Detective Mitchell's breakthrough?
It was a combination of factors, really. But one crucial piece of evidence came from a rather unlikely source, a neighbor, an elderly man who'd always kept to himself.
Okay. What did he see?
He told Detective Mitchell that he'd been up late the night of the murder, struggling with insomnia, and he'd seen a car speeding away from the Johnsons' house around the time Jennifer was killed.
Did he get a look at the driver?
He couldn't say for sure, but he remembered thinking it was odd. A car like that, out so late in their quiet neighborhood.
This wasn't a sure thing, but it was enough to pique Detective Mitchell's interest.
Exactly. It was a thread, a tiny detail that didn't quite fit. And Detective Mitchell was determined to pull on that thread and see where it led.
And where did it lead?
To Daniel's doorstep. Metaphorically speaking, of course.
Yeah.
But it was a crucial turning point in the investigation.
I bet. So what happened next? Did Detective Mitchell bring Daniel and Linda in for questioning?
He did. But both of them stuck to their stories.
Yeah.
Daniel claimed he'd been home asleep at the time of the murder, and Linda backed him up, saying they'd spent the evening together watching movies.
But Detective Mitchell wasn't buying it, was he?
Not for a second. He could sense they were hiding something, and he had a feeling that those text messages held the key to unlocking the truth.
So he got a warrant for their phones.
He did, and what he found was damning. Hundreds of messages between Daniel and Jennifer. Many of them sent late at night, messages filled with obsession, desperation, even threats.
Oh, wow. That's bad. What about Linda's phone? Was there anything incriminating on there?
More than enough to make her an accomplice. The messages between her and Daniel painted a very clear picture of their involvement. Not only did she know about the affair and Daniel's growing obsession with Jennifer, but she also knew about the murder.
And she helped him cover it up.
The texts were pretty clear. She helped him dispose of evidence, create alibis, the whole 9 yards.
Wow. It's hard to believe someone could be so cold and calculating to prioritize their own self-preservation over basic human decency.
It's a chilling reminder of the dark side of human nature. the lengths people will go to protect themselves, even if it means betraying everything they claim to hold dear.
So what happened to Daniel and Linda? Did they go to trial?
They did. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The text messages, the witness testimony, the blood evidence found at the crime scene, it all pointed to their guilt.
And how did the trial play out?
Well, Daniel's defense team tried to paint him as a man driven to madness by his obsession with Jennifer. They argued that he wasn't in his right mind when he committed the murder, that he was a victim of his own uncontrollable impulses.
The old temporary insanity plea, did it work?
The jury didn't buy it. After a lengthy trial filled with shocking revelations and emotional testimonies, both Daniel and Linda were found guilty.
What were their sentences?
Daniel was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Linda was found guilty of being an accessory to murder and obstruction of justice. She was sentenced to 15 years.
15 years. Doesn't seem like enough, does it?
No, perhaps not. But in the eyes of the law, justice was served. The real tragedy, of course, is that none of this will bring Jennifer Johnson back.
That's the thing about these cases. The ripple effects are endless. A life cut short, families shattered, and a community left grappling with the unsettling truth that darkness can lurk even in the most unexpected of places.
It's a stark reminder that we never truly know what goes on behind closed doors. The secrets people keep, the darkness they hide.
This deep dive has been a roller coaster, honestly. It's a story about betrayal, obsession, and the devastating consequences of unchecked desire. It's a story that reminds us that even in the most seemingly idyllic of places, evil can flourish.
And sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones hiding in plain sight.
That's right. As always, folks, thanks for joining us on this journey into the dark side of human nature. Keep those lights on to lock your doors, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.